from the Institute for the Advancement of Cognitive Education. These are powerful podcasts, conversations with scholars, authors, and professionals, cutting-edge resources, helping you to enhance better thinking and learning.
Good day. Today we're talking to Professor Louise van der Berg. She's an Associate Professor at the Department of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is part of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of the Free State in South Africa. She has more than 30 years experience in the field of nutrition, and she is passionate about the role of nutrition, student wellness, and the prevention of chronic disease of lifestyle. You are so welcome.
Thank you.
So Louise, I think an important question is why? Why is it important that parents and teachers know about nutrition and the impact it might have on cognitive development of children?
Well, as I've written in the blog, newer research now links specific food and specific dietary patterns directly to cognitive functioning. And cognitive functioning is very important because it involves processes like working memory, verbal memory, attention, and planning abilities. Thus, the link between food and cognition plays out in the long run. In other words, the type of food that a child follows habitually has an effect on his or her cognitive functioning, but it also works in the short term, meaning that what a child ate for breakfast, for example, can affect their cognitive function on a given day.
So what you actually then mean is that there are long-term and short-term effects.
Yes, definitely.
And what children eat habitually will then impact their brain development in the long run,
Absolutely.
but also their brain functioning in short term.
Absolutely. And it has direct effect on things like memory and the ability to focus their attention.
And all of this is based on research, on data, studies.
Yes, definitely. In research, we've got a specific tool called a systematic review that allows us to look at and evaluate the findings of all the studies that have been done on a specific topic and then make a conclusion. And there is a number of very good systematic reviews that actually shows this link between cognition and the diet of children.
And I think there are very few parents in South Africa and in the developing world that are aware of this.
Yes, unfortunately, when we look at how children actually eat and how it all plays out in school, there definitely is a gap in the knowledge. And that is what we really want to address.
So I guess then the question is, what is brain food?
Yes. These systematic reviews that I've been talking about, some of them that specifically looked at the effects of food and diet on cognitive function clearly shows that a diet that contains lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, certain types of fish, and ample amounts of fiber improve cognitive functioning. In other words, it has a positive effect on working memory, planning abilities, and the ability of children to focus their attention. In contrast, the review found that certain dietary patterns significantly inhibit these cognitive functions. Diets with such negative effects were rich in less healthy snack foods. That would be things like crispy chips, crackers, and biscuits, as well as sweets. And also high in sugar-sweetened beverages, which includes things like fizzy drinks, sports drinks, and cordials. Other negatively impacting food are processed meats like bihanners, rations, bologna, as well as fried foods, refined foods, and takeaway foods. Typically, fast foods and street foods like slap chips, kambani or quota, that's popular in South Africa, and garage pies.
Now this is scary because our children are pushing for that. They want to have the fast food, they want to have the chips and the sweet cold drinks. But what you're saying is that that will negatively impact their cognitive development and cognitive functioning, right?
Yes, that is absolutely the unfortunate truth about it. It's not what advertising to children promotes, but it is what science shows.
So one question that parents often ask is, should children eat breakfast?
Yes, VP. One of these other systematic reviews that looked at all studies about the role of breakfast in cognitive function found that a breakfast is very important for memory and overall accuracy in school tasks. It is interesting to note that children and adolescents have much higher average blood flow to their brains than adults. This is to deliver a steady stream of glucose and oxygen, both of which their brains burns much faster than adult brains do. In addition, children and adolescents have higher sleep demands than adults, which means if they go to bed earlier than adults, they have long periods of overnight fasting, which depletes their stores of glucose overnight. Thus, children and adolescents wake up running low on brain fuel, making a breakfast before school vital for their cognitive functioning. Our research also shows that not any old breakfast will suffice, however. It has to be a low GI breakfast. In other words, foods that break down slowly to ensure a slow, steady flow of glucose instead of a spike.
Right, so, and of course GI is the acronym for
glycemic index, and like I say, that means a low GI is what we're going for, and low GI foods are foods that break down slowly, as opposed to high GI foods that break down quickly and cause a spike in blood glucose.
And I suppose all the foods that you've listed, the fast foods and the fizzy drinks and the sweet drinks, are food with high GI, and the other food that you've mentioned in the beginning would be food with low GI.
It's not actually quite that simple. Some of the highly fatty foods like takeouts can have a low GI, but then their overall nutritional value is very poor. So it's a combination of good nutritional value foods plus a low GI. Both things are important.
So what would be a good breakfast?
Well, ways that one can practically make sure that the child goes to school with a low GI breakfast is to first of all replace high GI breakfast cereals like cornflakes, Rice Krispies and sweetened pops with low GI breakfast cereals, which include oats, all bran or muesli. Also, adding some dairy to the cereal like milk or yogurt lowers the GI of the meal. Interestingly, maize porridge has a very high GI, but if you make it the night before and you let it cool down completely and then reheat it in the morning, the GI becomes much lower. In addition to cereal and milk, a good low GI breakfast also includes some fresh fruit. To further lower your GI, you can also add a little low-fat protein like a boiled, poached or scrambled egg, maybe with some vegetables even. And then for those very particularly busy mornings, a favorite go-to is just some sliced apple with some peanut butter for a dip.
And I think that's very practical advice that parents can use. I like the idea of making the porridge the night before and just cool it down and reheat it the following morning.
Yeah, that is quite an interesting thing that very few people know.
So Louise, if we think of what children eat while they are at school, oftentimes they buy food and snacks at the tuck shop. What are your thoughts on the tuck shop culture that we currently have in schools?
As you noticed when we mentioned the different foods that are good for cognition, it unfortunately is the opposite of what the basic food environment in and around the schoolyard is for children. And unfortunately, research shows over and over again that the food environment will influence what the children choose to eat. So we as parents and teachers therefore have an obligation and a right to influence what is sold at these tuck shops. Unless we change the food environment that learners find themselves in at home and at school, we will not succeed to improve their eating habits. Instead, a child should rather be sent to school with a healthy low GI lunchbox. So to prevent the morning rush, the lunchbox can be packed the night before and kept in the fridge. A tip that really works is to involve children in making a list of healthy possibilities that they would like to eat and have in their lunchboxes, and post this list somewhere in the kitchen so that you have some quick reference. And then, of course, keep the kitchen stocked with these ingredients. So a good lunchbox contains a variety of, for instance, whole wheat starch, vegetables and fruit, a little dairy, and a small portion of low-fat protein. For example, a lunchbox can be a whole wheat sandwich or a brown tortilla wrap or even a pasta salad. You can spread the bread or the tortilla with homemade or store-bought hummus, low-fat mayonnaise, low-fat cottage cheese or mashed avocado, and then just add some tomato, cucumber, lettuce, and or a slice of cheese or egg. Limit the fat and the oil rather to just one small serving per lunchbox. For fruit, you can include a whole fruit or a fruit kebab, a small fruit salad, and then vegetables can take the form of raw pieces with a dip of cottage cheese of hummus. Of course, you could also make small quiches, which includes eggs, cheese, and vegetables, and then all children like a treat at the end. And this can be homemade popcorn, nut granola, some dried fruit, a small handful of nuts, or a small handful of peanuts and raisins.
And if the listeners didn't get all of this, I think this is such practical advice that's also included in the blog that you wrote and that will be posted on our website. I think all of us are subject to the economy and the effect of the economy. And I want to ask this question explicitly. The food that you refer to aren't expensive necessarily.
Not necessarily. From every level of foods that you can choose from, there are more expensive and less expensive options. And one can really eat a balanced diet and send a child to school with a lunchbox that is very balanced and low GI for much less than they actually would spend at the tuck shop.
But the important thing would be to apply the right principles.
Yes, absolutely.
Louise, is there any other practical advice that you can give to parents to uphold good nutrition?
Yes, Phoebe, I think it's very important to talk about what children should take to school to drink instead of the fizzy drinks and sports drinks that abound in the tuck shops. And a milk or low-fat flavoured milk, or in winter hot chocolate with low-fat milk, are very good choices. To drink, you can give a child fruit juice, but it's very important that fruit juice should be diluted, because even though 100% fruit juice is rich in vitamins and minerals, it is unfortunately also a huge amount of natural sugars. So it is advised that one should dilute the fruit juice half-half with water or with tea. You can use black tea, green tea or rooibos tea that you brew and then cool it down and refrigerate it and use it to dilute the fruit juice. So these are excellent choices instead of the drinks that they actually can buy at the tuck shops.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice, because oftentimes we think if we give fruit juice, that's healthy in itself. But
unfortunately, there are studies that show not as much as the fizzy drinks, but in some cases it contributes to overweight and obesity because it's so concentrated, and just that big amount of sugar, even though it's natural sugar, is just a large amount of carbohydrates that the body needs to break down at once.
So dilution.
Dilution
that's
is true. Yeah.
Where else can parents find additional resources and tools that you would recommend that might be helpful?
Well, one has got to be very careful where you get your nutritional information from, because there is so much unscientific information on the internet, and therefore I want to guide you to a few that I can recommend. But first, I also just want to talk about supplements, because parents often make the mistakes of thinking that a poor diet can be remedied by supplements, and the billion-dollar supplement industry certainly makes use of that gap in the market. However, research consistently shows that a healthy, varied diet on its own far outperforms an unhealthy diet plus supplements. The truth is that healthy foods contain thousands of components that work together towards health, including cognitive functioning, and no supplement can yet capture all of these benefits. So rather than get lost on the internet, I can advise you to look at a website called gabbysteenkamp.co.za. Now, Gabby is a registered dietitian that has spent the last 20 years developing a whole number of books based specifically on healthy eating and low GI. And 3 of her books that I can lift out that are really very good recipe books, but also educational material that gives background information on healthy eating and GI. These 3 are Eat for Sustained Energy for Children, Fast Food for Sustained Energy, and then Snacks and Treats for Sustained Energy. Then beyond, her website www.health24.com often uses dietitians to also write interesting blogs about lunchboxes that are very good. Then for younger children, there is a website called infantandtoddlerforum.org, which is run by the British Dietitian Association, and that is an excellent source of information for parents, and there's lots of different materials that can also help you there. Although it's for younger children, it also applies to older school children. And then, of course, last but not least, any dietitian or nutritionist registered with the South African Health Professions Council will be able to give you expert advice on children and adolescent nutrition.
I think that's very helpful, and I suppose for our international listeners, there will be similar bodies in their own countries.
Yes, so in every country, dietitians have to register with some professional council. So it's always good to look, because there are also lots of fly-by-nights that call themselves nutritionists that are not actually trained in the science of nutrition and dietetics.
So accreditation with professional bodies is vital.
Yes. So when you do look on the internet, it's always safe to look for advice by a dietitian, then you know.
I would like to encourage our listeners to go to our website. All of the information is also written down in the blog that Professor van der Berg wrote, and you will find the hyperlinks also to all these websites in the blog. Where can our listeners get hold of you if they've got a question?
I am at the University of the Free State at the Department of Nutrition and Dietetics, and my direct number is 051 401 3116.
And of course, for our international listeners, the dialing code coming into South Africa is +27, and just omit the 0 at the beginning of the number. We will also provide Professor van der Berg's email address in the blog. Louise, thank you so much. Thank you for your valuable sharing of information. I think it's very helpful, very relevant to many, many families and schools, and we really appreciate your thorough preparation and sharing of your knowledge.
Thank you, VP, and thank you for the opportunity.
This podcast is produced by the Institute for the Advancement of Cognitive Education. Find us online at www.ilearnthinking.org or on social media at iLearnThinking.